Hey everybody, and welcome back to another book review, but teacher edition, or educator edition, but also I would argue parent edition. So this book I picked up, there's like a couple different book studies that are happening over the summer around the country, and so this is one of them. And the book is Reading Isn't Optional, and I've already finished it, but the book study is still going on, like it's a month-long book study that's on Zoom and stuff. But this book, Reading Isn't Optional, it's edited by Jean A. Schaff, and I'm probably butchering her name. I'm so sorry. But this particular book focuses on secondary education, which is what I am in because I teach middle school. So we're really looking at middle and high school. And there's a lot of other contributors. That's why it's edited by her. But there are a lot of contributors. Gabriela Bell Jimenez, Mitchell Brookins, Kim St. Martin. There's just a lot of people that have done a lot of work and research around reading and the crisis of reading. So from an education standpoint, if you aren't aware, and from a parenting standpoint as well, the education reading crisis that has been going on in our country is getting progressively worse. And everybody's like, oh, it has to do with COVID. In this particular case, it does not have to do with COVID. Yes, there is some learning loss with COVID, but in this particular case, we cannot just blame COVID for learning loss. Most of this actually is stuff that, one, starts at home, and two, is about practice and how we teach reading. So for a very long time, my husband and I were talking about this because I've been reading this book, and I've also recently watched a mini documentary called The Truth About Reading. But the big thing here is that for many, many years, like when I was growing up and before, there was a emphasis on phonics, right? And phonemic awareness, which is helpful. And that does work, right? It teaches kids what the actual sounds are supposed to sound like in specific letters, or when you put them together with other letters, these are the way that things work. Then probably about 15 to 20 years ago, we switched to sight words, which doesn't work, respectfully. And I was explaining this to my husband because he was like, what? What's a sight word? And basically, if you don't know what a sight word is, you show a kid a word and they eventually just learn that on sight that is the word, right? So if the word was red, R-E-D, right, then you would know every time you saw R-E-D, that is red. But that doesn't work when you get to bigger words, right? Because what if you add a letter in between red? So if you add an A after the E, it's no longer red, but it is red, right? So then that gets confusing because then you have kids trying to figure out, is it red or is it read? And then if you add a Y at the end, is it ready or ready? So doing sight words kind of creates other issues. And by the way, I am not an extreme expert on this by any means, but what this book really points out is what I see in middle school. And that is kids who do not know how to sound out words, especially when it gets to complex words. If it's a simple word, if it's a one syllable, maybe even a two syllable word, most of the time they'll get it, but a lot of times they do not. And when it becomes a 3 syllable and a 4 syllable, it's like a whole issue. And I get kids, 13, 14, 15-year-olds who ask me, they're like, hey, how do you say this word? Or what does this word say? And in my head, I'm like, just read it, right? You really just want to say, read it. Or my co-teacher, he was like, sound it out. And last year I had to go, they can't sound it out. He was like, what? And it's because they were never really taught how to sound it out. They don't know, what all the components of the word are. They know sections of the word, but those sections are wrong because they're doing it based on sight and not based on actual phonics. So there's a whole gamut of things that go into teaching reading. But one of the things that this book kind of does is it gives you some suggestions of what to do if you are an older person teacher. Like how do you support your kids in your classroom when they can't yet? And the big thing is most kids, by the time they reach sixth, seventh, eighth grade, if they can't read, they have been discouraged. They don't want to do it, or they found coping mechanisms, which kind of brings up the documentary, the mini documentary I was talking about, Truth About Reading, is literally about people who are old. And I mean old, like I'm talking 60s, 70s, who literally went through life without being able to proficiently read. And I want to highlight proficiently. I kind of mentioned like sight words and stuff. They can read basics, but when you get into that complex high level reading where you have to be able to comprehend as you're reading, they weren't able to do a lot of that. And some of it is, actual learning disabilities, right? Like you have dyslexia and things like that. But in other cases, it's just fundamentally how they were taught did not work for them. And so it just didn't stick. And so they get to these older ages, and like one of the guys, he literally taught school. He had gone through like high school, college, everything, pretty much sailed through. He went on an academic scholarship, but he could not proficiently read. And somehow he was able to still teach school, which is diabolical to me. But then I sit there and I think about all the times that I've been at school, and there are teachers through my educational career, but also like as a teacher. And like, if we have to read something out loud in a meeting, the amount of times that I'm like, huh? What did you say? Like, that's not the word. But we've learned as a society how to cope with the fact that certain people can't read, or people cannot read proficiently, right? And so just some like facts, right? 54% of adults 16 to 74 lack proficiency. 54%, that's over half. And this is just in the United States, right? This is people that read English, right? I couldn't tell you what those numbers are if you go to different languages or anything, but I'm sure that that if you looked, this number is probably higher at this point, because this where I got these numbers is a couple years old, right? 65% of U.S. fourth graders fail to meet NAEP standards, which is a reading proficiency standard. 65%. And most of those kids, right? So 65%, keep that in mind. 66% of those kids will likely wind up in jail or on welfare. And it's not for lack of trying. But when you cannot read proficiently, when you struggle, the work that you have to do to cover that up to be able to get a successful job is egregious. It's absolutely insane. One lady was talking about all the different steps that she has to go through because she can't proficiently read. And she's more my age. So she was talking about specifically emails and the fact that AI is what helps her with her emails. You can't rely on AI to read everything to you because AI doesn't always understand it, right? But she was like, I have to click this and then I have to click this. And if it's still wrong, then I have to go to here. And I'm like, and if you could proficiently read, you wouldn't have to do all those extra steps, right? 70% of incarcerated individuals read below a fourth grade level. That's age 9 and 10. There are 9 and 10-year-olds that read better than people in prisons, which is a problem. But our society thrives off this stuff. They thrive off the fact that we have full prisons. it's not our fault that they're criminals, right? No, it is. From an educational standpoint, it is our fault as a society as a whole, right? Again, this is years ago, but the US ranks 125th out of 194 countries in the literacy rate. We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And we're 125th. Like, hello. You cannot say that we're smart or intelligent if we are ranking that low just on literacy alone, right? 30 years of research on what is called the science of reading is largely ignored in classrooms, which is 100% true. If I go back to my sight words rant, there has been so much research about how to teach reading at many levels. That is called the science of reading. The overall piece is called the science of reading. And it's a lot of information. Don't get me wrong. I've been through several trainings on this. But there's so many schools, so many states that create standards and say, this is how you're going to teach reading. And it doesn't work because it doesn't align to the science of reading. We know that it doesn't work, but people keep doing it, especially in schools where funding is low. It's arguably worse in those schools. On a positive, 95% of people can learn to read if taught with evidence-based methods, which we have seen, right? But then the question becomes, okay, what do I do as a parent? What do I do as a teacher? One, if you're a teacher and you have not been through a science of reading training at any point, I highly suggest that you go through at least one, because it'll give you a different way to look at how to support your scholars. If you are a secondary teacher, so like middle school and high school, and you're just like, I teach content, I don't need to worry about that. If you want to help some of your kiddos, one, I highly suggest that you get this book and look at some of the suggestions and ways that you can help, even in your own classroom. Like, these are ways that you can help your kids in the space that you can control. There's just a lot of really great suggestions in this book that I went through and highlighted and took notes on that I already do. I was already doing them, partially because I went through the science of reading training, right? And the other piece of it from a parent perspective is this does start at home. You cannot rely on the schools, on the education system in your area to 100% teach your kid to read. It's not a thing. And if you're a parent that's like, oh, they'll pick it up eventually, like, especially if you're getting feedback from your kid's school that like, hey, they're kind of struggling with reading, do not have the mindset of they will pick it up eventually. They won't. Truthfully, they won't. You're going to have to do some work. That could mean spending a little extra money to get a tutor, or there's a lot of reading programs out there in the country that support the science of reading and can help kids learn. They also work with adults too. But you can't just sit back and hope that your kid will get it from school. They won't. They absolutely will not. And this is also more than just reading to your kid at bedtime, right? Yes, you can read to your kid at bedtime, but like, do you know how many books that I had memorized just from my parents reading them to me at bedtime? Like, that doesn't work either, right? You need to have your kid reading out loud to you. You need to be a reading household. Get kids off video games. That's the biggest thing. Get them off the computer and off video games and give them a book, right? Hand them, a book and find what they're interested in reading. Like, I tell people that all the time. They're like, well, my kid doesn't want to read a chapter book or whatever. If they read a manga, that's fine. But they're reading, right? But I would ask them to read sections of it out loud to you so you can hear what your kid sounds like when they're reading. The thing that killed me last year, I had a kid who struggles with reading, so therefore he struggles with comprehension. And he got so upset with me because I failed his paper that he wrote. The reason I failed it is because he AI'd it, Like, let's start with that. But he was so upset. He was like, I don't understand. Like, I did the work. This is what she asked and I did it. And I was like, well, it was done with AI. And his dad, unfortunately, was not in the conference, but his mom was, and his dad was on the phone. His dad goes, well, read what you wrote. Read it out loud. The kid couldn't read it. He couldn't read it. He starts, and it was just so broken and painful and just all over the place. And I was like, that's partially why I know that you weren't the one that wrote this. You don't know what you wrote. And the dad goes, you can't even read that. So what makes you think that she was going to pass you? And then I'm sitting there going, Dad, this is where you say, okay, not only can my child not read proficiently, he might need some extra help. And it just blew my mind that the parents were just like, okay, it's fine that you failed, and this is why you failed, and we're just going to move on. And I'm like, huh? So anyway, long rant to say, this book is really good. I highly suggest it to all secondary teachers, of course, but also parents, looking into this book. And there's a bunch of other books out there on the science of reading and stuff. And I highly suggest, if you have a kid who is struggling, with reading, that you invest some time and some money, into getting them the proper supports if the schools won't provide those supports. But also take time to make sure that you understand where your kid is at. And 9 times out of 10, if your kid is struggling, you are probably struggling too. So, think about doing it together as a family. So it's not just like, oh, isolating my kid and making them feel like they're dumb. No, but you can support them by saying, hey, we're going to do this together, right? You're going to go to your lessons, I'm going to go to my lessons, and we're both going to be better for it, right? There's just so many things in this book just really kind of hit home for me, just what I can do in my space as a teacher, but also what I can do as a upcoming parent, and making sure my kid is ready to go. I mean, people have been donating books, which I love, or gifting books, which has given us a very robust children's section in our house now. I know that you guys always see my bookshelves behind me, but on the lower shelf down, on this side is where most of the kids' books are, but those books are about to move to baby's room, and there are many, many, many more books that we've gotten that I'm going to put in baby's room, and they are a wide variety of levels, but I want him in to have all of that print-rich literacy in front of him, so that when he does start reading, and when he's at the age that he can start reading on his own, that he can go pick up a book. And when he's old enough, he can come out here and pick a book off my shelves, because we are a reading household. I mean, as you guys know, Cheshire is always on the computer. But even still, books are a thing. Half of these books are his. Seriously, half of the books on the kids' shelves are his. But we are a book house. And we're going to be a book house. And it's not going to be an option, and not in this house. But just consider that, for all of you parents out there, all of you teachers out there. Arguably, this might be one of the longest book reviews I've ever done, just because I was just so convicted and so just awakened by some of these numbers that I was like, okay, what do I have to do, for my own kid, but also for the kids that I serve? So, there you have it. My book review. Great book, 5 out of 5. Like, comment, share, subscribe, as always, if you so choose. We are getting in the home stretch. By the time this video comes out, I will be about a week and a half, 2 weeks, before baby will appear. So I'm trying to get a lot of reading done this summer. It's going a lot slower than I anticipated, but hopefully there will be a couple books and stuff that have some reviews before baby gets here. But we are super excited, and I'm super excited. So yeah, there you have it. As always, look forward to seeing you in the next book review. Bye!